This is the first lecture in which we are going to record the difference between the statistical procedures. What are the predictive statistics and what are the descriptive statistics, and what are the parametric procedure, non-parametric procedure, how the data is collected by observational study and by experimental design. And we have to discuss in this lecture what are the measurement scale like nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio. These types of the basic things are to be discussed in this lecture, as well as we have to describe the different sampling technique, like what the random sampling is, what is the stratified random sampling, and cluster sampling, and different sampling technique are to be described here in this lecture. Firstly, we are going to start by discriminating the predictive statistics and descriptive statistics. In short, descriptive statistics is comprised upon the a statement of research, or the problem has to be defined, which is the first step in descriptive statistics. The very first step in descriptive statistics is problem definition. Problem definition, or we can call it as a describing the research problem. After defining we have to collect the data, the second step. The collection of data is a part of descriptive measures. The step number 3 is to make some tables like tabulation, or we can call it as classification. Then fourth step is visualization, in which we make the graph or charts for the different variables in our data set. The next step is analysis, which involves the finding the mean, median, mode, correlation, proportion. Different descriptive procedures are to be applied on the data set, and few of the major things are to be calculated. On the basis of these analysis and on the basis of these visualizations, we have to apply some predictive procedures. The two major predictive procedures that we have to discuss here is step number 6, which involves the predictive statistics and building model. Which involves the parameter estimation, model testing, model learning. These are all the part of predictive statistics. Parameter estimation and testing of hypothesis is the one of the major part in predictive statistics. Testing of hypothesis. So these are the different techniques that we have to learn during this course. The descriptive statistics consist of a method of organizing, displaying, and describing data. Describing data means computing some of the descriptive measures. Then making the graph and summary measures are also the part of the descriptive measures. This kind of analysis is used to explore the data in the initial stages of the data analysis. We can call it as exploratory data analysis. This exploratory data analysis will help us to build the model. The basic purpose of finding the descriptive statistics is to build a base for models and model estimation and model deployment, So these are the part of model buildings. So descriptive statistics is the first stage, and predictive is the next step, which we have to involve in solving any research problem by using the data. Now, descriptive collection of data, the data organization, making tables, making frequency tables, making classifications, these types of organization, summarize the data, and then visualization, making chart and graph, finally analyzing the data. In the predictive statistics, we have forecasting, population parameter estimation, hypothesis testing, and making decision and conclusion. So this is the difference between the predictive and descriptive statistics. Initially, we have to start any problem by descriptive statistics. Then later on, we will apply the predictive procedures to making and model building and model deployment and model testing. Here we have some basic definitions of data. Facts and figures are called data. That may be qualitative or quantitative, like if the age of a participant is quantitative, while the gender is a qualitative. So every variable in our data set can be classified as either qualitative or quantitative. Data may be quantitative data may be discrete or continuous. If the data is in whole number, then we can call it as a discrete data. If it can be in fractions, we can call it as a continuous data. So the price of an item is continuous data, while the number of students studying in a class is a discrete variable. Data can be recorded in the form of raw form, which we can call it as ungrouped data, and we can make a frequency table, which is known as a group data. So the data in its original form is called raw data, or we can call it as a ungrouped data. If the data are classified according to some intervals, making the frequency tables in the form of either discrete or the continuous interval, we can call it as a group form of the data. Data may be qualitative. Qualitative data can also be categorical. Some of the data which is qualitative can be categorical, like gender. Gender, there are the two values for the gender, like males and females. So we can call it as a gender is a qualitative variable. And it can have only the two categories, the male and female. The color is also a categorical because we have red color, blue color, black color. Suppose three colors are to be are very important, and then most of the items that we have in our basket may be classified into the few values of the color. So we can call it the color is a nominal variable, or color is a categorical variable which includes in a qualitative data. The quantitative data, temperature, salary is the number of point score on a 100-point exam, with a weight, the height, the price. All these items are called as a quantitative variables. Quantitative variables can be classified as a measurable or countable. The countables are discrete and the measurable are continuous. Data can also be classified as structured and non-structured data or unstructured data. Structured data, mostly we have the data which involves in the structured form can be easily analyzed by the statistical procedure. So for the applying any of the statistical procedure, we need the data to be in structured form. One of the example of the structured data is given on one slide, which is this one. This is the example of a structured data. The name, the ERP number, the marks, the gender. So these columns are organized in a specified way, and rows are called cases. Case number 1, Abdul Rafe, the ERP number, and the marks out of 20, and the gender male. The gender is a qualitative variable. It has two categories. So we can call it as a nominal variable. Marks out of 20, it is in whole numbers. We can call it as a integer data we have here. ERP number is a nominal variable because we do not involve any types of calculation on ERP number. And name is a purely nominal variable. It is not categorized. This is called a string in most of the situation. Strings is a sequence of characters. So these are the sequence of characters, but they are not categorized. So gender is a categorical variable, while name is not categorized. This is the serial number which we have. So this type of data is called structured data, right? If I am talking about one more column here in this data set, and that column is called uh, review after completing a course by the student. And student have an option of taking the reviews in any of the multimedia form. Like one student record a video about the review of the course, and the second student just type a text letter in the review, and one student just put a number like wow in a scale of 1 to 5. So every review is in the different format. This is in the video form, this is in the text form, this is in the number form, this is in the audio form, and maybe. So these reviews are not analyzed statistically because they are not in a unified format. So one of the technique we have to apply in data science or machine learning that convert the unstructured data into the structured one. After converting the unstructured data into the structured one, we can analyze the variable review for different data sets. So unstructured data may be in plain text, maybe any multimedia tool will be used like videos, images, or text or audios. So this type of material can be in these unstructured form we have. Important terms in predictive analysis: population is a large collection of similar elements, can be comprised on limits, like any boundary has to be defined. For example, all students studying in IBA is a population of IBA students. Population may be homogeneous or heterogeneous. With respect to the population, we are saying that all of the students studying in IBA is a homogeneous population in the way, but at the same time, if we are discussing the same population by the another factor like gender, so we may classify the population into the two categories. One is called male student, other is called the female student. That with respect to the gender, the population may be assumed as a heterogeneous population. Sometimes the population is finite if it is limited, like the IBA student in the studying in the IBA is a finite population. Sometimes the population is infinite. Maybe the number of fishes in a lake or the number of stars in the sky may be an infinite population. Census is a term which is used for complete enumeration. Complete enumeration means the data from the entire population is to be collected and analyzed. So in most of the cases, we are avoiding the census because of the consumption of time, the consumption of amount needed to conduct the census, or the more labor and the more people are required to conduct the census. To avoid these limitations, we are avoiding the census. And in some of the business problems, avoiding the census due to the product has to be destroyed after completing the census. In real life problems where the human lives are involved, it is very dangerous to conduct the census because at the end of the research project, may be causing our population in a way in high dangers. So that is why in most of the situation we are avoiding the census. Instead of census, we are going to we have to draw a random sample from the population and then analyze the sample. This type of procedure is called predictive procedure. So what the predictive procedure is, by analyzing sample, we have to describe the population. The population is to be described by using sample. This is called predictive statistics. Two important terms are parameter and statistics. Parameter is a characteristic of entire population, and characteristic of sample is called statistic. One of the example of parameter is the average height of a student studying in IBA is a parameter. So we will use mu for it. The mu is what? Average height of all students in population. Average height of all elements in a population. Similarly, the X bar is a statistic, and X bar is what? Average height of selected sample is a statistic. So our objective in predictive statistics is what? Mu is unknown, and we have to infer about the population parameter mu by using the statistic. This is called inferential statistics or predictive statistics. So by using statistic or by using the characteristic of sample, we have to infer about the population parameter. This type of statistics is called predictive statistics. Now, all of you are familiar with the term population. This is the formal definition, consists of all set of measurements for which the investigator is interested. In simple, we can call it as a universal set. A population may be referred to as a universal set in set theory, and sample can be used as a subset. The subset is a sample and the universal set is a population. But if the subset is selected on the random basis, it is very feasible for us to represent the entire population by using a random sample. The random sample is the requirement for most of the predictive procedures. And census is a complete enumeration. So what is the difference between the sampling and the census? The data collection from the entire population is a census, while the data collection from a subset or from a selected part of the population is called sampling. The sampling is a technique, and the sample is the selected part from the population is called sample. We have the few examples of population. All tweets on the Twitter in July 2018. This is the population of tweets. All videos uploaded on the YouTube in 2017. We can assume it as a population of videos in 2017. We are interested in all movies on the Netflix under the category of science fiction. So this can be a sample in certain other scenario. If we are interested in all movies on the Netflix is a population, then the movies under the category of science fiction will become a sample. But in the perspective right now, we are assuming as all movies under the category of science fiction is my population. So this is my population, and from this population, I can select a sample. Suppose the movies on the Netflix under the category of science fiction in August 2021. So this can be a sample of science fiction, all science fiction movies. Another example of population is all bank transaction in HPL in the year 2018 and all post on the Facebook by Pakistanis. In all of these examples, that these examples can be act as a sample if we are dealing with the large set. Suppose all post on the Facebook is a population and all post on the Facebook by Pakistanis may be a sample. The sample and the population is a perspective by the researcher. Now, the different example of sample related to that, randomly selected tweets in 2018 having the text IK. So these selected part is called a random sample. These are the different examples of sample. Now we have to describe the parameter, describe some of the parameters and statistics, for example, given in the previous two slides in the example of Twitter. In the example of Twitter, the average length of tweets, average length of tweets is a parameter. If we are computing this average by population, if we are computing this average from the sample, then this will be a statistic. The same average will be statistics if we are computing the average. The width of movies. Width of movies means the time length. The time length, average length of movie. If we are computing this average by using the entire population, we call it as a parameter. But if we are computing this average by using sample, we can call it as a statistic. In the case of HBL transaction, the average amount transacted is a parameter if we are computing this average by using the entire population. Amount transacted. But if we are computing the same average by sample, this will be a statistic. So statistic and parameter, these are the two terms. An average of population is represented by mu, and average of sample is represented by x bar. So whenever we are using the mu, means population mean, and whenever we are using x bar, is the sample mean. Sample mean is a statistic and population mean is a parameter. Simple random sample, where every element of population having equal chance to be included in the sample. This is called simple random sample. Suppose I have 10 balls in an urn. These are the 10 balls. The size of population is 10. By well shuffling, we are selecting 3 balls at random. So this is the way of making a random sample out of population. Drawing the 3 balls from this population of 10 ball is a random sample. If we are selecting these samples by without replacement, or we may select this random sample by with replacement. If we are selecting by with replacement, then population will be assumed as an infinite population because I selected the first element, then replace it again into the population, then selected the another element from this population. So I can select thousands of elements from a limited population. So a finite population will be assumed to be infinite if we are selecting the samples by with replacement. Sample selected in this way is called a random sample, or just a random, simple random sample, or just a random sample. So what is the basic definition of the random sample? Every element of population having a probability to be included in the sample. This is called random sample. This probability may be same, this probability may be unequal. If the probability is same, then we can call it as a purely simple random sample. If the probability of elements are not equal, we have a different set of sampling technique like stratified sampling. We have a quota sampling. We have a sequential sampling. These types of other sampling plans we have, but in two major plans are simple random sampling and stratified random sampling. Random sampling is also called chance sampling, or we can have randomness in that. So random sampling, stratified sampling, systematic sampling. In random sampling, we have equal probability to be included in the sample. In stratified sampling, we have heterogeneous population. We have heterogeneous population. And here we must have a homogeneous population. Homogeneous population and heterogeneous population. These are the two perspectives for the two different sampling plans. In an example, if we are selecting a random sample from Karachiites and we are interested in the variable income, so with respect to income, the population of Karachi can be bifurcated into three major segments. The population of people living into the posh areas, and the population of people living in the middle income areas or moderate income areas. And low income areas. Now we have to select a random sample of 100 from this population by stratified sampling, as with respect to income population is heterogeneous. So I can have a random sample of 30 from the posh area and 35 from the middle income area, and the remaining will be selected from the low income area. So 100 has to be completed. Now random sampling technique number one is to be applied on the posh area. Random sampling is to be applied for the moderate income area and low income area. So three selected random we have by simple random sampling. So stratified sampling is nothing other than is a repetition of a simple random sampling on the each heterogeneous part of our population. So this is called stratified random sampling. In systematic sampling, we have to select the first element as random. Then subsequently, the rest of the elements are to be chosen. Suppose we have a book of 1,000 pages. 1,000 pages. This is the size of my population. These pages are to be distributed into the 10 segments of 100 pages. So once 100, then 101 up to 200, and so on, then 901 to 1000. Now one random number is to be selected out of in between 1 and 100. Suppose that is 98 is the random number which is selected. Then subsequently the 198 and 298 and 998 will be included in the sample. The page number 98, page number 198. The first is selected at random. Then subsequently the 100 will be added because each segment comprised on 100 elements. So this type of sample is called systematic sample. So in systematic sample, it is also random because the first one is to be selected at random and all of the subsequent are based on the first one. So these are the different sampling techniques we have in different type of statistical procedure we can apply. In this slide, we have 4 different parameters: the population mean, the population variance, the population correlation, and the population proportion. So these are the different parameters, and corresponding to these parameters, we have a statistic. This is the sample mean corresponding to this population mean. We can call it as a sample mean is an estimate of population mean. Sample variance is an estimate of population variance. Sample correlation is the estimate of population correlation, and sample proportion is the estimate of population proportion. The proportion of girls student in IBA is the parameter, while the proportion of girls student in my class is a sample proportion, because my class is a sample of all IBA student starting. So why sampling? Why not census? Because census, in some of the situations, census is impossible. In some of the situations, some of the business problem, it is impractical, because a owner of a company does not want to include all of the produced item to be used in the testing procedure. Suppose the company want to find out the average length of life of bulb, average length of light bulbs. Average length of light bulbs can be obtained, but entire population of bulbs will be used and becomes garbage after completing this procedure. Then this average can be determined, but none of the businessmen will invest a large number of produced item for this purpose. So what is the actual situation will be, a random sample of 100 bulbs will be selected, and the length of life of these bulbs are to be computed. So this is called sample mean. And on the basis of sample mean, we have to infer about the population mean. So this is the way that most of the business procedures has to be done by using these techniques. So in most of the business problem, it is impractical to use all items for computing the parameters. And sometimes cost involved, sometimes the lives are involved. Suppose a drug is invested to control the malaria. This drug is not tested. We cannot test this drug to the entire population, because if we apply the drug before testing to the entire population, it is very harmful for our population. So a sample of medicine can be given to only the 100 patients, and then the effect of this medicine on the 100 is to be analyzed. This is called sample mean, or the sample, or called statistic. Then on the basis of the results of statistics, we have to prefer or infer about the population parameter. So the human lives are involved, therefore census is not possible or not practical. Business items are destroyed. Lot of business items are to be destroyed, which were produced by the company. So census is impractical in most of the situations. So we prefer the sampling in all of these cases. In this example, we are going to select a random sample this is the population of 13 students. It's a very simple example in which 13 students are there, and we have to select a random sample of 20. If we have to select a random, not to select a random sample of 20, we have marks out of 20 in the next slide. And this data set is assumed to be a population of a small size. What we have to do, we have to draw a random sample of size 5. Then we have to compute the mean of whole class. This is called mu, or a parameter. Then we have to calculate variance of the whole class. This is also a parameter referred to as sigma square. The sigma square is the variance of population. Sigma square is the variance of population, is a parameter, and mu is the mean of the whole class. And then we have to compute the mean mass of a sample. So the sample is selected in part number A, then you have to calculate the mean of the sample. It is represented by X bar. And then you have to calculate the sample variance. It is represented by S square. So S square is the sample variance, sigma square is the population variance, X bar is the sample mean, mu is the population mean. These four things are to be calculated from the population given on the next slide. So this is the slide in which we have four variable names, the ERP numbers, the marks out of 20, and the gender, either male or female. We have to select a random sample of size 5. So how we have to select a random sample of 5? We have to draw the random sample. So I'm just completing this example in Microsoft Excel. Now data set is pasted into the Excel. We have to draw a random sample of 5. So I'm using random numbers by using a function rand between. And rand between, we have to specify the lower number and the upper number. Lower number is 1 and upper number is 13. So in between 1 and 13, we have to draw random numbers. The first is 5. How many random numbers you have to select? 5. Because a random sample of 5 is to be drawn. So these are the 5 random numbers. We have to fix these numbers, just copy these random number and paste as values. Because every time when we click on a cell into the Excel, all of the cells are recalculated. So these are my sample values. 2 means the 02. 02 means Abdul Rahman is a first element included in my sample. Then Abrar Iqbal is the next element. Then 11th. 11th means Mary Ajir is the third element. 7th one is Hamza Naqvi is the next element. Now we have to calculate the mean of population and the mean of sample. Mean of population can be computed mean Mars because this is the variable Mars. This is the variable Mars and is a quantitative variable. We have to find out the averages by using these are the ERP numbers and these are the names. This is the serial numbers or the code number. And these are the random numbers selected. We can call it as a random number. Now, what we are going to calculate? Average Mars. So if for average, we have to calculate Mars in sample. Mars by second student is 15. Mars by third student, 18. Mars by 11th student is 16. Mars by 7th student is 17. And Mars by 4th student is 15. So this is the Mars obtained by the sample of 5. Now what we have to calculate? The parameter. We can calculate the parameter by just calculating the total hair and sample mean by calculating the total hair. So now sample mean can be calculated as, and the population mean can be calculated as population mean is equal to the mu is equal to summation x divided by n. In this case, summation x is 199 divided by, these are the 13 elements. So this is the population mean mu. Now I'm going to calculate the sample mean. Sample mean can be calculated by sample, total of sample divided by the size of sample. Total of sample is 81 divided by size of sample is 5. The 81 divided by 5 is the sample mean. This is represented by x bar, and this is represented by mu. Now I am going to calculate in Excel these two numbers. This is equal to 199 divided by 13 is 15.3, and this is equal to 81 divided by 5. This is the sample mean, parameter. This is the population mean, the parameter. This is the sample mean, the statistics. And the difference between the parameter and statistics is called sampling error. The sampling error is 16 minus 16.2 minus 15 is the sampling error. Now, in the next step, we have to calculate the sample variance and the population variance. For sample variance, I have to make one more column here, and that column is what? X minus mean whole square. X minus mean whole square. This is X minus mean whole square. I am going to make this column here, and the total of this column is to be calculated. That is equal to X, X is 12, minus population mean. Population mean is 15 point something, minus and whole square. We have to make M8 freeze. To make M8 freeze, we have to place dollar sign over there. The $M$8 means what? The population mean is freeze now, and we copy the data to the cells below, then this will not change. Now you have to drag this. And similarly, a column is to be calculated here for the sample variance. X minus mean of sample and whole square. This is equal to, the same formula is to be applied. 15 minus sample mean, and the sample mean is 16.2. This is the sample mean, and whole square. Similarly, N14 is to be freezed by placing the dollar signs, function key F4. Copy this and compute the total. Similarly, you have to calculate the total here. Now we are going to calculate the sample variance and the population variance. Sample variance is S square, and population variance is sigma square. The sigma square can be calculated as sigma square is equal to summation X minus population mean whole square divided by the population size. And in this case, it is equal to 78.769 divided by 13. This is population variance, and sample variance can be calculated as, I am just changing the color to represent format. Now sample variance S square. S square can be calculated as summation X minus sample mean whole square divided by N minus 1. So this is equal to 6.8 divided by 4, not by 5. So this is equal to 6.8 divided by 4, and this is equal to 78 divided by 13. So these two numbers are to be calculated. This is equal to 6.8 divided by 4. The sample variance is 1.7, and population variance is computed here is equal to 78 divided by 13, because the size of population is 13. The sample variance is 1.7, while the population variance is 6.05. Now, all of the elements from the question has been completed. What we did in this question, we have selected a random sample of size 5. From this random sample of size 5, we have computed the population mean, which is a parameter, and the population variance, which is also a parameter. Then a sample variance is computed, and the sample mean is also calculated. So these are the two statistics. Now you have to draw a random sample of size from the same population given on the previous slide, and by using a stratified sample. And you have to draw a random sample of size 10 from the entire class. But we have two elements, two categories into our population. One is the male population, other is the female population. Now you have to draw a random sample of size 8 from the male population and size 2 from the female population, so that the entire sample size will be of 10. So you have to complete this problem yourself. Three measurement scales are already defined. Nominal scale, in which we have categories, but the categories does not have any sense of measurements or any sense of comparison, like male, female. We cannot say that the male are superior or the female, or like Pakistanis are better than the Indians, or the Indians are better than the Americans. So we cannot say anything is superior or anything is inferior. That type of scale is called nominal scale. The nominal scales are just labels to identify the few things. Your ERP number is nominal, your car number is nominal, your address is nominal, and your names are nominal, your gender is nominal. These are the different, some of the nominals are categorical, but some are not. Thus, the categoricals are in categories, but other are called strings, like names. Name of the student is a string, ERP number of the student are string. ERP number is not quantitative, ERP number is nominal. We do not have any sort of calculation on the ERP number, so mostly the CNIC number, the ERP number are to be kept as a string numbers. In this picture, you can see that terminal number 7, terminal number 8, terminal number 6. Can we say that the terminal number 8 bigger than the terminal number 7? No. Terminal numbers, these are just labels. The terminal numbers are nominal, not category. Terminal numbers are not quantitative. These are nominal or qualitatives. Some of the data may be in on Likert scale, like ratings, anxiety level. Anxiety level, you have to rate the anxiety level in a range of 1 to 10. Then this will be called as ordinal scale. The ordinal scale has a measurement, sense of measurement. 10 means the high anxiety, the 1 means the low anxiety. As most of the time students rate their teachers after the course in a scale of 1 to 5. That is called ordinal scale. The ordinal scale make a quantitative sense. The smaller meaning inferior, and the larger number representing the superior. Interval scale and the ratio scale collectively are called scaled variables. So scaled variables are quantitative variables. Scaled variables are quantitative variables like height, the weight, the price, the wage. All these are the quantitative variables. And we can use a general term, scaled variable. Scaled variable can also be split into the two, interval and ratio. In interval, we do not have absolute zero, while in ratio we have absolute zero. So absolute zero is a major difference between interval and ratio scale. Now we have the two sort of procedures, is parametric procedures which can be applied to the quantitative data, which fulfill the certain assumptions. The assumptions must be checked on the quantitative data to apply the parametric procedures. Parametric procedures involve population parameters like population mean, the population variance, the population correlation, the population proportion. If parameters are involved, the procedure may be parametric procedures. These procedures can be applied on scaled variables, interval, or ratio. These cannot be applied to the nominal variable. These cannot be applied to the qualitative data. Parametric procedure can only be applied to the quantitative data, which fulfill the assumptions. What are the assumptions? Assumptions are normality, assumption of normality, assumption of equal variance, and there are lot of assumptions related to the each procedure. So we will describe the procedure in parametric list, and every procedure contains its own set of assumptions that must be checked before applying that parametric procedures. Z-test, t-test, f-test, chi-square test, these 4 tests are referred to as parametric procedure in statistics. And every test has its own set of assumptions that must be checked before applying the procedure. Non-parametric procedure do not involve the population parameters. And we can apply on any data, nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio. So any data can be used for non-parametric procedure. No assumption of normality is needed. No assumption of equality of variance is needed for non-parametric procedures. The list of non-parametric procedure are sign test, Wilcoxon rank test, sign rank test, Kruskal-Wallis test, Friedman test, Spearman rank correlation test. So these are the few tests related under the category of non-parametric procedures. Now, the last 2 slides of this presentation comprised on the two ways of data collection: observational study and experimental design. In the observational study, we have to collect the data through the questionnaires. Suppose we have to find the 100 women age 30, of which 50 has been smoking a pack of cigarette for 10 years, while the other 50 has been smoke-free for 10 years. So this is the behavior of these 100 women in past 10 years. So we have not to wait till 10 more years to get this data set. So we have to just prepare the questionnaires and distribute these questionnaires to the 100 randomly women's, in which 50 were smoking since last 10 year and 50 never smoked since last 10 years. Then data is gathered. This type of data collection is called observational study. So in the observational study, immediate data can be obtained by questionnaires. While in experimental design, if I want to gather this data by experimental design, then I have to wait for 10 more years to get this data. The 10 more years has to spend to get the data. In the same example, if I am doing the problem by experimental design, so I have selected 100 women who never smoked. Then 50 are kept into a group of non-smoking group and remaining 50 in a smoking group. These distribution are also be performed by using randomly. Then for the next 10 years, we have to keep all of these 100 women in isolated environment, and 50 women have to be smoked 10 cigarettes per day for 10 more years, and remaining 50 has to be smoke-free for rest of the 10 years. This is the very accurate data set, but for this data set, we must have to wait for the 10 years. So this type of data is called design of experiment. In design of experiment, we have some certain terms: randomization. Randomization is the process of randomly allocated the women to the 2 groups. This is randomization. Randomization make the process unbiased. if we keep the women's by their wills to keep into the two group, whether in a smoking group or a non-smoking group, then these two data set will not be a unbiased data set. Replication means the repetition. We are not using one woman in a group of smoking, one woman for a non-smoking group. We are using 50 women in a non-smoking group and 50 in a smoking group. Why 50? Why not one? That is called replication. If any of the women skipped from the analysis, then study can be performed on the remaining of the 49 women's in the experimental unit and subject plot are these are the two terms which we generally used for the peoples involved in the analysis. Like experimental unit are the women who are smoking, and experimental units are the women who are not smoking. The experimental unit are those units on which we are applying the treatments. The treatments are what? Treatment are the comparison that we are doing. The comparison of smoking and non-smoking. The smoking and non-smoking, these are the two groups. We use the term treatment for it. That's all for this presentation. In this presentation, we studied census, sample, population correlation, the population itself, the observational study, inferential measures, design of experiment, the frame, stratification, descriptive measures, ordinal scale, sample correlation, parametric procedure, structured data, population variance, classification, heterogeneous data, proportion, nominal scale, sample variance, unstructured data. That's all. Thank you very much for this video. Allah Hafiz.